Bueller?
Now, it takes.
All right. All right, so like Dan said, my name is Woody Bendle, and I own a consulting company over in Leawood, Kansas called Next Level Growth Strategies. I do have an undergraduate and graduate degree in economics. I graduated from Florida State University a long time ago, and I've spent the last 30 years in corporate America doing a variety of different things, but everything has been surrounding customer and data analytics. Understanding consumer behavior, understanding consumer choice, understanding why people make the decisions and the choices that they do, and how that affects businesses. And come on, here we go. All right, so who here in the room, I saw some accounting, but who here is accounting major? Got a couple, all right. And who here's had accounting classes already? So most of you, all right. Just a quick, give me a description of accounting. What is it?
Just to track like the financials behind a business and how that flows and tracking money around.
Absolutely, absolutely. The way I talk about it is how individuals and organizations keep track of money and how it's being exchanged, essentially. And it's also a lot about the laws, about how you keep track and the ethics of how you keep track of money and how you're organized. Who here has done finance or finance majors? All right, give me a definition of finance. Yep. Really, it's about understanding the systems of money. It's understanding how people best put their money to use. And so it's, again, it's building on a lot of the principles and the foundations of accounting and extrapolating that further. Now, everybody here, now who else an accounting major or economics major? All right. And everybody here has had at least one economics course. All right. Let's have a definition of economics. Dan. With the cookie in the mouth.
Study of how to fulfill our unlimited dreams, how to make good choices, really think rationally, separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah, so it's how and why people, this is Woody's definition, and it's not right or wrong, it's just the way I think about it. It's how people and organizations make decisions, right? So that's really what you're talking about. And there are a lot of reasons why people make decisions about different things. And the studies inside of economics, micro and macro, we weigh in a lot of things. It's not just about money. It's not just about money systems. It's not just about businesses. It's about people. It's about societies. It's about communities. It's about nations. It's about inputs, capital resources, labor resources, natural resources, right? This is ag school. Both my daughters graduated from Kansas State University with degrees in animal science. Agricultural inputs, resources are very, very important. Goods and services, how those are exchanged and traded, how they're made, nations and societies, and again, how all this all comes together to create balance. So one of the I was actually at a lunch meeting last week with a buddy of mine, and he also has a background in economics. And we were talking, I was saying, well, I'm coming over to K-State next week to talk, and I said, you know, it's about economics and business and decision making. So how do you characterize economics? He says, you know what? We think globally about lots of things that we like to park and peg into our heads, right? So we all have reference metrics. You guys have the student price index. I've got a few of those things in here. But again, these are all things that most of us probably have a ballpark figure around, right? So how many people live in the United States? 330 million people, 130 million households, give or take. 2.5, 2.6 people per household. I'm not lying, there are other things that we pay attention to as well, right? We look at the treasury rate, we look at the 30-year mortgage, which the two are intertwined. Median home value, $375,000, and it's gone up an awful lot in the last 2 to 3 years. Existing home sales, we look at the velocity and the pressures there. New home construction. These are all things that are reported out monthly and quarterly, but these are things that most economists kind of park away in the back of their head and just pay attention to. And when they see things change, or they hear reports like, no, that's about the same, or, whoa, that's a lot different, right? Job openings, unemployment rate just came out last week on Friday, 3.6%. Holy smokes, that's really low, right? That's like historically low. But we've still got 6 million people in the United States unemployed, and there are 11 million job openings. There's a lot of pressure there, right? And we're not even talking about U6, which are the people that are underemployed. More things that we think about, right? Real GDP, average price of a gallon of gas. Is that in the student price index? All right. The Dow Jones, it's off today, right? Friday it was 35,000. Not so much today, had a hard day. The national debt, $30 trillion. That's insane, right? And you guys can relate to these, right? A 30 pack of Busch Latte, right? 20 bucks, Walmart, not bad. Large Papa John's pizza. I used to work with a guy that was the CFO at Pizza Hut. He says, if anybody buys a pizza without a coupon, they're an idiot. But the public tuition university, right? So we were just talking about that. It's $1,000 a class. When I started school, I think we paid $150 a class. Big, and that's a credit hour. I was paying it's like $50 a credit hour, right? But these are all things that we think about. And the thing is, in economics, we understand that these things are all intertwined and they're all interconnected. They all work against and with each other. And we were just talking about US data here, right? But we recognize in economics, we think about things globally. There's international systems, international trade. Now we have Space Force. We have all these other things that we have to think about. But in economics, it always boils down to the relationship between price and the relationship between quantity. On the demand side of things, how do we make choices with respect to how much we want to buy and at what price? And we understand the relationship, right? Higher prices, we're going to buy less. Lower prices, we're going to buy more. On the supply side of things, right? If the prices are really high, I'm willing to sell a whole bunch of that stuff. But if the prices are really low, I might not want to sell any of it. But this is the foundation of all that we want to do. And I'm going to give you a couple examples of things that I've recently been involved in my consulting business. The first is the socioeconomic analysis. Who here's heard of that term or is familiar with what that is? I'm not going to put you on the spot. So when I was in grad school, I did have a graduate research assistantship. And this is what I did. We did socioeconomic analysis for state governments, city governments, county governments, federal governments, international governments. Most of the time, these things surround what regulatory or law implications are going to have on communities, people, businesses, et cetera. Case that I just got involved in, I got sucked into it by my neighborhood home association. What we're looking at here in this blue highlighted area is 115 acres of agricultural land. It's basically 1 year will be for corn, next year will be beans. And they rotate it back and forth. This is in Leawood, if anybody's familiar with where that is, 135th and State Line. I live right where the R is on Square. And I run by here all the time. And I love it. This actually used to be a horse farm not too long ago as well. So anyway, the developer is proposing coming in here with nearly 1,000 building units. 833 new residential units, all contained within this small 115-acre area. 1,200 bedrooms. Sounds like a lot of people. They're going to add 1.3 million residential square foot. So a lot of apartments, a lot of townhomes, a lot of brownstones, a lot of bungalows, lots of stuff. They're going to have offices. They're going to have retail, and they're going to have a 100-bed assisted living facility. Now, let's just stop for a moment and think about what this thing is here and the implications of having something like that dropped in there. Let's just think of some examples that we might want to be thinking about as decision makers, right? The city of Leewood's got to make a decision whether or not we want to have this thing here, whether or not we think that makes sense, whether it's a good decision for our community. What are things that we want to think about? Anybody? Yes. 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 All the above. Will this have implications on the demand for community services? What will this do to home values? Will these things be filled, right? Is there really a demand for homes in this area? If they build retail, if they build office, will they come, right? Is there a need? Right, you see here, you got Walmart, you got Lowe's, Target down over here, you got all sorts of retail that's empty. There's nothing in it. But yet, we've got a $500 million development project going in here. Oh, and by the way, there's a couple schools. And that's all the people that have kids, that's where they got to go. And they're full. So how are we going to accommodate that? And again, these developers are awesome. I mean, they're nice people, and they can sell you anything, and they can make awesome, well, they pay people a lot of money to make some really pretty pictures, compel you to say, hey, this is a great deal. But what they're saying is 833 housing units, 1,200 people. Think about that. We're saying no kids, maybe 10, 20 kids max. No impact on traffic. Okay, if it's 1,200 people, the average person actually has more than one vehicle. You're right, no impact on traffic. Oh, and that retail and the offices and that other stuff, no impact on traffic. Negligible impact on home values. Now, this is actually the reason I got sucked into this thing, because we're going to talk about those homes and we're going to talk about what this maybe would do. You guys, what's the B12 that's down here, or the 12B? That have an impact on home values around there? Home values too. I know some people that own some homes around there and they're real happy about it. All right, negligible impact on public services. All right, so you got 1,200 more people. There's only 33,000 people in the entire city of Leewood. That's a substantial increase in people. And there's a 100-bed assisted living facility going in there. That's a lot of demand on ambulances and fire trucks daily, because I see it. So, but it's not going to have an impact. So the first thing we wanted to do is try to unpack this, to say, look, you're smoking hippie lettuce when you're talking about 1,200 people coming into this place. But this is how it broke out. They said, all right, with single family home, that's families like, you know, houses where we all grew up, right? It's only going to have 2.5 people. Luxury apartments. So these are the apartment, 4-story apartment complexes are going to be standing in there. Only 1.27 people. I don't want to be that 0.27 person, but there's only going to be 1.27 persons per unit. On down the line, this is how they get to their number. And again, the city, when they're looking at it, they're kind of doing one of these. Well, we think there's going to be 2,300 people. The developer says there's going to be 1,100 people. What are we really going to have? Again, one of the things that economists love to do is go to the data. And one of the best sources of data is certified and freely accessible by every single one of us, if you know what you're doing. You tap into the census data and there is a treasure trove of really, really useful information. So unpacking the data for the city of Leewood, the average household has 2.7 people in it. The average renter occupied housing unit in the city of Leewood has 2.23. I can't make their numbers work out. My estimate is about 1,900 people in this community. So you're looking at 2,000 people in a 115 acre area. That's a lot of density, right? you're talking 20 plus people per acre. I'm telling you right now, the communities around it, the neighborhoods aren't anywhere near that. They're like 5 or 6 people per acre, maybe 7. Now let's talk about the kids, because as I said, the schools are overcrowded as it is. They've got portables sitting outside that are rust buckets and mice, and it's awesome for the city of Leawood. So they're saying there's literally only going to be 10, 20 kids max. Again, doesn't really pass the smell test, which is a lot of what economists do, right? We look at data, we think about data, say, does that make sense? I'm not going to spend a lot of time unpacking all this stuff, but the city of Leawood right now has 25% of that community's population is under the age of 18. Now, given that they're proposing a lot of apartments coming into this place, it's probably not going to be 25%, but it's not going to be like a rounding error close to 0, right? So what is it really going to be? Again, banking on the census data for the city of Leawood, we're looking at something like maybe 200 kids under the age of 20. Now, it feeds Blue Valley North High School, and it feeds Mission Trail and Mission Trail Elementary, middle school and elementary school. Middle school and elementary school are already busting at the gut, and they can't handle. And if it's a third of those kids, you take 60 kids in an elementary school, that's a lot of kids, right? So how do we handle this? So again, the parents were concerned about this. We still don't have a real answer as to what that's going to be. The other thing about this is the home values. And again, home values are really tricky. And there are econometric statistical methods for evaluating and assessing home values. You will hear the expression hedonic valuation often used. And basically saying the component parts and the things that surround a home are the things that make up its value, right? If you have marble tops or marble floors versus formica versus whatever, that makes a difference. If you're working with brass or you're working with aluminum, those things make a difference. If it's brick versus aluminum siding, that makes a difference. All these things add up. Also, your proximity to other things, right? How close you are to churches, how close are you to a cemetery, how close are you to a power plant or power lines. All of these things can contribute to the value of a home, either positively or negatively. And this is an example of a neighborhood right near where this is going to be happening. This is one of the last communities that actually built single family homes. Now this area over here is all shopping. There's a bar, there's a couple restaurants, there's a big vacant, it was a office max, it's just empty now. But anyway, this is all just commercial sitting over here. And this neighborhood built up just a few years ago, right? And the thing is people choose very rationally, right? So if you're going into a neighborhood like this, where are you going to go first? You're going to go furthest away from this. And that's exactly what happened. And by the way, those are the larger lots, and those are the most desirable. And you could see successively over time, as this thing built out last closer to the retail environment, right? People didn't want to be right next to the bar. They didn't want to be right next to these places. That's an economic choice, right? They're making rational economic decisions about how they want to invest their money in their home. And it's based on the home value, the future home value, and what they can be surrounded by. There was another thing, and I'm going to flip through this stuff pretty quickly here. There was another thing that was brought up by the developer. They pulled this bunny out of the hat in September of last year. It was a study from the University of Utah. And basically it said, apartment complexes are great for home values. Seriously, that's what it said. I was like, okay, let's dig into this thing. Is that really the case? Well, first of all, when you looked at and again, let's look at the data. Let's follow the trail. Let's see what it's saying. When you look at the data from the University of Utah study, the appraised values of these homes that were within a half a mile or beyond half a mile from these apartment complexes that were built over a 9-year period were about 300,000. So they're a little below even what the average household value is now, right? In the United States, 375,000. And the cost of living in Salt Lake City is pretty high, right? So make some adjustments there. Now you go into the communities immediately surrounding this farm area that's going to be developed, right? Well, the average home over there is like $600,000. Not really comparable, right? And there are a number of things like that. It's a much older house, 48 years old versus 22 years old. So there are a lot of differences between the homes and the neighborhoods immediately surrounding this development versus where they're talking about dropping this development in. The other thing that was really interesting about this, right? So this is the area blown out a little bit where we've got a half-mile buffer. And the way that they did the analysis, and I'm not picking with the analysis, they actually did a lot of really good work using GIS data and census data and appraisal data. I mean, it was really, really useful stuff. But take a look at some of these clusters. Some of those things are right on top of each other, right? Well, the way that they analyzed their data was they looked at the home values within half a mile of these apartment complexes and beyond a half a mile of these apartment complexes. There's double and triple dipping going on in here, right? You had homes that were beyond half mile in one apartment, but they're within a half mile in another apartment. So you've got some noise in the data and you're like, But the whole basis for going in and picking apart some of this data was not to pick with the authors of the study. It was to say, look, City of Leawood, if you are using this study as a basis for making a decision about whether or not putting in a new development right next to all these homes is a good decision, you can't. They're not comparable. And that was really the point of the whole exercise. But ultimately, in a socioeconomic analysis, you're really trying to understand the total costs and benefits, not just dollars and cents, but also you can start assigning dollars and cents to societal costs, right? So we know that there's going to be fees coming in and property taxes coming in, right? We can quantify that. But there are a lot of things that nobody had yet quantified. And they're still not fully quantified. There's going to be some expenses, right? We know there's going to be increased demand for fire and police. We know that there's going to be increased demand for other departments as well. No one had done the work to figure this out. Oh, and by the way, back to the traffic piece, the negligible traffic. I want to say it was 20,000 car occasions every single day. That's a lot of traffic, right? And effectively what they have to do is blow out the lanes on the major street, 135th. They have to blow out the intersection. They've got roughly, and I used to work for a construction company that did this stuff. They're looking at roughly $15 million worth of work that they don't have in the budget right now for the city of Leawood. It's got to get done. It's all based in the traffic studies. So they got to figure this out. But the point is, there are other things too that we have to think about, right? So there are going to be benefits to the city, right? There's going to be some increased housing. You're going to have some increased state and tax revenues. That's all good stuff, generally speaking. I'm not a big fan of the taxes, by the way. Additional city personnel is going to be required. You are definitely going to see increased travel time, and you can assign a cost. And is it Texas A&M that does a study every year that they produce? And they talk the lost value of sitting in traffic to American society. It is staggering how much money we lose sitting in cars every single day and every single year. Potential impact to property values, we don't know, but someone needs to do the work to figure that out. Capital investments, right? They got to spend the money in expanding the roads and getting that blown out. And then potential school population impacts. And that's the thing that the parents were really, really kind of wound up about. I think there is going to be some potential school impacts, but we'll let them sort that out. So they're still in an independent process. They've got 6 months to come back, put some more numbers together, but it's got a tentative approval at this point in time. So I've got a little bit more to do, and then this is actually, so our last speaker was talking about data science and data analytics, and that's a big part of what we as economists do. And I can't encourage you enough if you're so inclined and if you're wired this way. And again, trust me, there are not a lot of people that are wired this way, and that's a good thing, right? We don't want everybody to be like everybody else. But if you like data and you like analytics, you like statistics, you like mathematics, take as much data science, take as much programming as you possibly can, because it will pay dividends.
Real quickly, because I meant to bring this up earlier, a couple of things. We offer the forecasting class to Dr. Bachmeyer usually every other year. That's going to be offered this fall. It's Econ 686. It's a pretty high level class where you develop your own research project and really work their way through it during the class and work hands-on with Dr. Bachmeyer. Something I highly encourage people to consider if they feel prepared for it. Econ 630, which is econometrics, you brought up earlier, could help with that class. It wouldn't certainly be a bad idea to do it at first, but it's not required. And so that's just something that I wanted to bring up earlier and I forgot to do so. That's one of the courses that we want to get on your radar. We don't offer it, right now we're offering it every fourth semester. And secondly, for anyone that's not a major, Southwest Airlines emailed me the other day and they're looking for kind of a hiring data. This would be more for graduating seniors, but anyone could maybe take part on April 12th. They're going to have an informational session about jobs that they're hiring for right now. So if you're interested in either of those things, let me know. And I'm just interrupting, but I
No.
forgot to interrupt you.
Well, and Dr. Bachmeyer is an awesome dude. If you want to take a class from him, strap it on because it is hard, but you're going to come out of that with some serious skills. You're going to learn R. You're going to learn a lot of things about data. You're going to learn about time series. We're going to talk about some of that stuff right now. Actually had him check some of this. I've worked with him in the past, so I had him double check some of my stuff. So, am I still thinking? I haven't done some of this stuff for like 6 years. So it's like, am I still thinking about this right? He's like, no, yeah, that's good. One of the things that I get asked to do as a consultant now and have my own business is help organizations figure out their growth strategy. That's a big objective with a lot of organizations, right? Growth. Well, what I try to boil it down to is an analysis of customers and products, right? So we can think in terms of your current customers and your current products. We can also think about new customers and new products, right? And each of these different quadrants are going to have a different strategy and different sets of tactics that we can employ to drive growth. Down here with current customers and current products, you got pricing and promotions, you got loyalty programs, you've got customer service. Someone mentioned something about customer satisfaction, I think in the MBA program, talking about customer satisfaction and measuring that. Hugely valuable. When you're talking about current customers or new customers and current products, now you're talking about expanding into new geographies, right? If I'm a retailer, maybe I'm going to go into another state. Maybe it's channel expansions. I'm a brick and mortar guy. I'm going to get into e-commerce, or I'm going to start cataloging. There's consolidation, right? I can go buy a competitor. All of a sudden now I've got new customers. And then there's marketing, right? When you get into current customers and new products, now you're talking about line extensions. You're talking about things like category expansion, right? If I'm a grocery store and all of a sudden I start selling beer and wine, hey, I've now got growth. We talk about acquisitions. Maybe I'm going to go buy somebody. We also talk about innovation. And then when we get into the upper right quadrant there, acquisitions and innovation, it's all about, and again, they've got a great innovation program here. So I encourage you to take a look at that. I'm going to spend the next couple slides talking about pricing because this is something that we as economists all work on. We study it's just what we do, right? And it's one of the strongest and biggest levers that we have as business owners and as consumers. All right, so what I'm going to show you here is a couple sets of data that I work with. This is from a retailer. This is from a store. This is a retailer that sold shoes. This is women's shoes. They sold men's shoes. They sold boots. They sold all sorts of stuff and kids' shoes. This is looking at their weekly sales data, the average price of footwear sold for a week for about 400 weeks from 2005 to 2012. And it's also looking at the number of pairs sold per week in the store, right? So you see a couple things right off the bat. First, you see that upward trend, the blue line. I fit through this thing. I'm just using Excel. And Excel is actually pretty powerful if you know what you're doing with it. But I just fitted a straight line in between this. Is like, look, it's going up about 1.25 cents per week. Started out at $13.44, and you can see it got almost up to $18 there. Now you get into units, right? So you see a decline. And again, right? Prices go up, unit sales go down. Amazing how that works, right? So this is a situation where you look at the prices going up and unit sales are going down. And it's that relationship, right? Units are a function of price. This is something that we all get in our Econ 101, Econ 102 books. It's the price elasticity of demand. This is the formula for it. What I did is grabbed data points from price at the beginning for 52 weeks and at the end for 52 weeks, unit sales at the beginning and end. We do the math behind it, and voila, we come up with a price elasticity of demand of negative 1.33. What does that mean? Yes. And what does that mean? Yes. And what's that going to mean? I'm a business owner. I see that. What do I need to be thinking? Why? There you go. This is costing them money, driving prices up, and they're doing it because the ingredient costs, and they're doing it for market pressures, but it's costing them sales. Now, there are a number of other ways to go calculate elasticity. So who here has done like a scatter plot in Excel or in some other tool, right? All you're doing is just, in Excel, you have the insert, then you go over to the graphing functions, you hit the scatter plot, and you grab the X and Y data, and it does it. And then you can throw a trend line in there. And I always like to look at the data. I like to see the relationship in the data. Sometimes there's a relationship that's real clear and defined like this. Other times it's just a hot mess. It's just a blob and it doesn't make any sense. And sometimes you can't do anything with that. This is a scatter plot of the exact same data I just showed you from the prior slide. And again, you see that very, very strong negative relationship. This is in fact a demand function, right? This is what you're seeing here. So Y, which is unit sales, is a function of price X. And what you're seeing is it goes down 59.64 for every dollar I increase. That's a lot, right? Now, there's actually a formula you can use to calculate elasticity based on a linear regression function. So it's beta, which is the intercept or the coefficient 59.64 times the mean of the independent divided by the mean of the dependent variable. When you do that, try to move the little box. Yeah. When you do that, this is how it unfolds. So remember on the prior slide, we saw elasticity of minus 0.3. Now it's minus 1.5. So, and again, this is a little more advanced methodology for getting to elasticity. Now, as an economist and a statistician, as an econometrician that you will learn in Dr. Bachmeier's class is when you take and transform your independent and dependent variable with a natural log and perform a regression, which is called a log-log regression, the coefficient, the beta, this number right there, that becomes your elasticity number. So now I've got an elasticity of demand of minus 1.3. And again, whoops, let's go back. So this is an elastic demand function. Again, I've now got 3 separate methodologies all pointing in the same direction. Let's see if we can take this even further. Now, there's another methodology that we employ in econometrics and in time series analysis, where what we do is we take the difference of this week versus last week and persist that all the way through the data set. And that's called the first difference methodology in time series. And there's some reasons for doing that. One is, let's see, here we go. Let me go back to this and I'll show you. Going the wrong way. All right. If we look at these charts, see how you've got some of these recurring patterns. So one, you've got a trend that's very persistent and clear that can become a problem in regression analysis. But you also have this very consistent seasonal pattern. And that also becomes a problem in econometrics and forecasting. And so what we try to do is get rid of that. And go down this way now. So when you take the difference of those variables, what it does is it completely takes any trend and any any meaningful pattern out of it, right? So now, if you run a regression through this thing, you should see exactly this. It should go right through the origin, the zero intercept. It should have no coefficient, and your R square should be crap. And that's in fact what happens when you do this. So when you do the price elasticity modeling on this, you're basically looking at your beta, your coefficient, divided by Y, then divide that whole thing by 1 over the mean of X. And when you do that, I promise you it's there. It's frozen. Come on.
I think sometimes it gets stuck on the,
It builds.
it gets stuck on the Zoom. Oh.
All right. There we go. So now we have another elasticity coefficient of minus 1.8. This is not getting better, right? This is getting worse. So we're employing more rigorous analytic methodology and coming up with numbers that are more compelling to say you should be dropping your prices because you will sell more units and you will make more revenue as a result of this. All right, and one more methodology here. I don't know, what am I thinking? So what we're doing here, so if you remember on the last slide, all we did is the straight math, this week minus last week. Well, what we're doing here is taking the percent difference. And by doing the percent difference on the time series data versus just the straight difference, you're in effect doing something very, very comparable to that log-log regression that we talked about that gave you the coefficient at that point in time, gave you the elasticity function. So when we did that here, holy smokes. How many elasticities do you come across, Dan, that are -2? Yeah. You don't come across that very often. It does happen, but this is like, guys, stop raising your prices now. Like, stop raising your prices yesterday. This is really, really, really bad that you're killing yourself. You're killing your business. They started reversing the prices after we did this analysis. So again, this is not like this is just fun and games that we're like, hey, we just like to do stats because we're weird and that's what we like to do. No, there's real world implications. There's real world insights that come out of this stuff, right? This led to a decision that was changed, and it helped turn, well, it didn't turn the business around completely, but it helped slow the decline of the business. They had a lot of other things coming at them that were compromising and affecting what was going on, but that was the big story. So here's, basically the storyline here is, again, we went from not a wrong methodology, but a pretty basic methodology using data out of tables to calculate elasticity using the arc function. Then you go to a linear regression, which is a pretty good step, and go to the log-log, which is even better. But then taking into account some of the premises and fundamentals of time series analysis, you do that first difference regression, and then you do that first percent difference regression. Each methodology is a little bit better in terms of its reliability, in terms of the insight that it's giving you about that elasticity coefficient. And the reality is the elasticity was somewhere in here. By the time you factored in some of the other things that we knew were affecting the business, competitive incursion and some things like that, it was closer to 2. But still, that's a highly elastic demand. And it did mean that we absolutely need to figure out a way to alter the mix and get our prices down. So I'm going to close with this. This is something that I go and I speak to MBA classes kind of all over the place every year. And we're all in school to learn stuff, right? And some of the stuff is more valuable than others. But what I will tell you is who you know matters so much more sometimes than what you know. Now, let me ask, all right, who's graduating like in the next semester or so? And you're going to grad school. Do you have a job already? No? Talk to people. How about you? Job lined up? Where are you going? And did you know anybody? Did anybody know somebody that got you connected? Yep. How about you? Yeah. Okay. Oh, and did you know somebody or did somebody reference you? You're rare. I did this at Wharton not too long ago. Large class. These people are basically paying the price of a house to get their graduate degree. There are over 100 kids in this room. There are a handful of undergrads that were taking some graduate classes and a dozen professors. I did this exact same thing. Most of these guys were graduating. All but 4 were landing someplace where they knew somebody. There were 4 people in that entire graduating class that basically got in on their merits and nothing else. They didn't have a connection. And what I will tell you is, you know somebody who can help you out. People genuinely like to help people. We just do. That's human nature. And you know, whether it's your parents, whether it's your aunts and uncles, whether it's your friends' parents or your sorority sisters or fraternity brothers' parents or brothers, use those connections because they're the ones that are going to open the door for you. Now, that might get you in the door, but it's not going to keep you in the door. And that's where that, but you better know something too. Right? So the stuff that you're learning in here is what's going to allow you to keep your job and move up in your job. And the more you learn, the better off you're going to be. You guys have a great opportunity in front of you. You know, the opportunity that they're presenting to you with the MBA, it's great if they can scholarship you in, if you get an assistantship in, it's fantastic. I didn't think I was going to go to grad school. When I graduated with my undergraduate degree, I opened 2 bicycle shops. I raced bicycles, I ran track in college. I'm like, sounds like a fun thing. It's a hard way to make money. I was in one of my stores on the campus at Florida State, and one of my old econ professors walked in and said, "What are you doing in here?" I said, "Well, this is my store." He's like, "You should be back in grad school." I said, "Well, this is my store." He's like, "Come talk to me." I sold my store. They paid for my school. I had a research assistantship. I was making $30,000 a year back 35 years ago as a graduate student, working as a consultant with a professor. These opportunities are out there. And again, I didn't get that on my merit. That was a who I knew. This guy knew me. I was involved with scouts. He was the area scout leader. It's just one of those things that kind of worked out. So again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing. You guys are the future. Believe it or not, you are our future. We're betting large on you to help all of us out. This is a great institution. I've put 2 kids through here. I love coming over. I've been over here and spoke to the Econ Club, I think 3 or 4 times now. Love doing it. Happy to come back. Did you guys go to Club Corp in Dallas? Is that who you went to? Hospitality management? Nope. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, Club Corp guys down there are pretty impressive too. But anyway, continue doing what you're doing and get as much education as you possibly can, but don't minimize the value of the network that you've got out there because they're going to be the ones that get you in where you want to go. So again, thank you.